We are here today to discuss the setting of Symons forms for building stem walls on concrete footings. We're given a footing here, pre-poured. We've got rebar already set in place. You can see here, the crew has come through and laid out the size of the wall or the inside of each Symons form. So that will be the layout. As you can see, the footing has been completely laid out already, and they have already begun setting Symons forms. We start thinking about setting up the Symons panels, and where we're going to begin setting the panels to create the form system. We want to start with a decent benchmark or a landmark in which we can make sure all the panels line up correctly and all the panels are spaced correctly to be able to accept the snap ties. In this case, we decided to start with this 90-degree corner. This is the only 90-degree corner on the project, therefore this is the easiest one to be able to begin and the easiest one to set, so that way the rest of the panels all come out matching and in line with each other. The reason why it is so critical to start at an access point that is easy to be able to match panels together is here. These snap ties go at each panel. They keep the panels together at the proper distance, and they tie the form system together for when we're ready to pour. You can see here these snap ties are held together with these wedges, and in turn the wedges are cinched together to make sure the panels all tighten together correctly. If we get this off, you can see the panels will be mismatched. We'll not be able to get the ties to link through the panels. We'll not be able to complete the system. Now, Symons does have means of making this happen. If we travel down to the 90-degree corner, you'll see there are available adjustment panels. So for example, the interior corner of this 90-degree has an actual corner piece that the Symons panel is linked to. The exterior has an adjustment panel that happens to be the width of our wall to be able to make both sets of panels line up correctly. And in turn, as you can see in the internal portion, all these snap ties link together per panel, and they are all wedged correctly to form the system. When we are working with a true 90-degree corner, the Symons panel system does supply hardware needed to complete these turns without any additional form materials or plywood or 2x4s. You can see here they supply an outside corner for the outer wall, which is fastened by the same wedges we use everywhere else, as well as an inside corner. The inside corner integrates with the snap ties as well as the rebar, and they're also installed with similar wedges that we see on the rest of the project. You can see here the Symons panel system works well on the 90-degree corners as everything is integrated with the system. Another thing to think about is staging your panels and how your panels are going to be located on the site. You see here with the opposite end of the site from our stockpile. Therefore, we've got all the panels moved that we will need to install. This is a good time to go ahead and oil the forms, chip off any remaining concrete from the last job, and prepare all of your materials for install. You can see here, as we've been installing the panels, we've gotten to these corners where we're going to wait because we need to custom make the corners. However, we've got all the materials in place ready to put up when the time comes. Another thing to consider when working with Symons forms or the Symons panel system is how are we affixing the bottom of these panels to your footing. Depending on the height of the wall, the head pressure of the concrete, and the weight of the concrete, there's a couple different options. This project, the crews decided to periodically set duplex nails into the footing itself, fixing the bottom of the form system to the footing. For a larger wall or a taller application, some folks install a 2x4 cleat that runs the length of both inside and outside of the panels to keep that panel from pushing itself outwards when the weight of the concrete is applied. So, dictated by the height of the wall and the width of the wall, will show if you need to actually install the cleat on the bottom of the panels or if they can be pinned into place as such. You can see on this run of the project, we've got both sides of the panel system installed. We have all of our required rebar installed along with the snap ties. This system on this side of the project is almost complete. As you can see, there's a little bit of wave to the two panels. They're not perfectly parallel. We'll go back through and place these turnbuckles to ensure this wall comes out straight and plumb. Thinking ahead through this project, there's no space inside this acute corner tight angle here of the property. So the crews put some horizontal strapping and braces across the tops to keep the interior portion of the forms from collapsing. Not be able to install the turnbuckles due to proximity to the other forms, so this is the next best thing. With these Symons panels, sometimes you're going to encounter an outside corner or an inside corner in which the panels do not fit. This will all be built out of plywood and 2x4s. Symons panels are a great system. However, there is a little ingenuity needed when you uncover locations such as this. We are back at our forming project utilizing Symons panels. I want to highlight a couple of significant ideas here that we need to cover. One being how you tackle forming an outside acute corner like this one here. You see this is a little bit less than 90 degrees, probably closer to 30 degrees. And the Symons system actually comes with hinged units you can use to set the angle you need to achieve. See, there's an outside corner. This here is an inside corner. And they're infilled with 3/4 inch ply fastened to these brackets provided by the system. You notice the crews began putting whalers up, actual 2x4 supports, keeping the panels square and supported so they don't collapse under the weight of the concrete. Here's another example of the hinged pieces that the Symons system provides. You can see this is more of a wider corner, over 90 degrees, and those hinge systems fan out enough to be able to mount your 2x4 whalers within. And again, on the outside, we've created our own panels with the provided brackets and some 3/4 ply. Inevitably, you'll come across a point in your project where you've got to create a footing for some sort of vertical support, whether it be a steel column or what. You can see here we've used our 90-degree sections again. Use a couple Symons panels to be able to bump that out. And then a fasten piece of 3/4 ply, creating that footing within our stem wall. Here's another example of an additional footing that we will be pouring along with our stem wall. You can see the inside portion of the form. Use a similar 3/4 ply panel, because if you see there, that space is larger than the Symons panel that come with the system. And then to bump everything out, similar whaler install with the horizontal supports, 3/4 ply with vertical supports, make sure it doesn't bow out when the concrete hits it, and the supplied right angle or 90-degree angles used to attach everything from the Symons system. So we've got integrated footings, stem wall attached to our original footing. And once we get the rest of the horizontal supports in, we'll be ready for rebar inspection and pour. You can see those horizontal supports span the perimeter of the entire form system. It's a touch more to install today. However, once these are all fastened together, we'll be able to install the rest of the turnbuckles, make all of the wall sections plumb, and we're ready for a rebar inspection. You can see here, the crew used a similar set of angle brackets supplied with the system to attach an adjustment panel. In a perfect world, we can use the Symons panel for every piece of this form system. However, the dimensions of this project do not allow us to do so. Therefore, we've evenly matched a piece of 3/4 ply with snap ties inserted in between to make up for the fact that that space is not the same width as the actual Symons panel. This is a good catch by the crew. You see we've got one of the adjustment panels here installed. However, there's no vertical support in the form of 2x4 or any sort of whalers on this panel, and nothing to actually fix the panel to the floor. So the crew went ahead, drilled into the footing, placed a bit of a 2x4 there to make sure that the bottom of that panel doesn't blow out and we lose the concrete out of this side of the form. Here's another example of good thinking from the crew, where these adjustment panels are on the corner here. Symons panels don't actually fit this angle of the corner, so we'd have to fabricate a couple panels ourselves. You can see we've got vertical 2x4 supports to make sure these panels don't bow out, and the crew has inserted a couple of 3/4 plywood wedges to make sure everything fits tight and does not shift during the pour. Okay, one of the final steps in this process, the crew installed some blocking here on the interior panel portion of the form. This will serve to create a recess that will accept the deck system later on in this project, once we've got everything backfilled and poured on our end. This also serve as a grade indication for the finishers to come through, so they will end up finishing the concrete flush to this interior blocking.